The Last of Us Part 2 is finally out and plucking our heartstrings like an acoustic cover of Take On Me.
I'll be gone in a day or two.
However, as we joined Ellie on her tragic zombie stabbing journey, we found some things that managed to bring a smile to our tear-soaked faces. Fun Easter eggs and in-jokes referencing some of our favourite Sony games and products. Because if there's one thing that's going to survive a zombie apocalypse, it's product placement. We're avoiding big story spoilers in this video, but be warned that merely by showing you where you can find these Easter eggs, you will learn a teeny bit about The Last of Us Part 2's story, so heads up.
Yes, Kira, that might work. But where are a boy and a half going to get 20 power cells?
From the villagers. Most of them have a power cell or two stashed away somewhere. And even if they aren't willing to just give them away, greasing their palms with a few precursor orbs should do the trick. And I bet there are even more of them out in the wilds just waiting for some brave adventurer to find.
If there's one thing that old platformers liked, it was having an outrageous number of collectibles littering their worlds. Naughty Dog's Jak and Daxter series was no stranger to this idea, with the first game on PS2, the Precursor Legacy, having 2,000 precursor orbs to collect.
These floating egg-shaped things are precursor orbs. Collect enough of them, and some of the villagers will give you a power cell in exchange.
If you're tearing your hair out trying to find all the superhero cards in The Last of Us Part 2, just think, at least there's fewer than 50 of these.
Hello.
Hang on, I know this guy. Huh. Precursor orbs were a mainstay of the Jak and Daxter games, so any fan of the series might rightly get a kick upon discovering this Easter egg in Seattle's Chinatown area. When you come across this super cool building, you'll learn that it's not just neat because it has a big old dragon painted on it. Inside, it contains a very special and rare relic. Once you've puzzled your way across from the building opposite, you can root around the top floor for some interesting bits and bobs, the most curious being a small bronze egg-shaped item.
What is this?
Jak and Daxter players will immediately recognise a precursor orb when they see one, on account of having to collect so damn many of them in all the games. Plus, when you pick it up, you're rewarded with the trophy Relic of the Sages. This is a reference to the sage characters you meet and save in the Precursor Legacy.
I would teleport you there, but I can't do that either. None of the 3 sages that maintain the other teleporter gates have seen fit to turn their ends on for quite a while.
What's most interesting is that the place you find it in is above a china shop. So, was the owner of this shop evaluating this item as a real-life collectible? Is it a real antique with the Jak and Daxter universe being in the same one as The Last of Us? Truth is, it's probably more likely that this relic is merely a bit of game merch, as in 2011, Sony actually made precursor orbs to celebrate Jak and Daxter's 10th anniversary, which would fit in just before the Cordyceps outbreak in late 2013. Damn, thought I'd found my retirement fund.
Cut it.
The Last of Us Part 2 asks the player to make some pretty big imaginative leaps, like imagining life in a world gone to ruin after a zombie outbreak, or that teenagers born in 2019 will one day be big Point Break stans.
It's like that movie.
Which one?
The one with the surfer bank robbers.
Oh, yeah. I love that movie.
They'd better not be talking about the remake. But that's nothing compared to the leap that bleak zombie game The Last of Us and sunny swashbuckling adventure Uncharted, also made by developer Naughty Dog, share the same fictional universe. And yet that's exactly what this Uncharted Easter egg suggests. You can spot this reference to Nathan Drake and his wall-scaling adventures in the chapter called Seattle Day 1 Downtown, where Ellie and Dina find the ruins of a bank.
Think we found the bank.
Should we go explore it?
Your call.
On the plus side, there's no queue at the cashier's desk, but on the downside, the place is chock-a-block with ravening zombies, who you'll need to deal with before you can explore any further. Turns out these zombies are the remains of a criminal crew who decided to spend Outbreak Day not holding their loved ones close or seeking medical supplies, but robbing a bank.
They tried robbing the bank on Outbreak Day.
Probably seemed smart at the time.
Smart's one way to put it. Overly optimistic about the value of American dollars in a society where you have to stab a zombie in the face just to get out your front door would be another. The robber's loss is your gain, however, as inside the vault you can pick up a shotgun, neato.
Thanks, dude.
And B, inside a safety deposit box, the real treasure, a ring engraved with the words Sic Parvis Magna.
Cool.
Eagle-eyed gamers will recognise this ring as belonging to Nathan Drake, worn around his neck for most of his adventures.
That somebody special?
What? Oh. Yeah. I guess you could say that.
Huh. I had you pegged as more of a woman in every port kind of guy.
Don't I wish? No, this was Francis Drake's ring. I, kind of inherited it.
Sic Parvis Magna?
Greatness from small beginnings. It was his motto.
That Latin more literally translates to so great and small, which is why you get a trophy called that for finding this ring, which also includes the date of Francis Drake's death and coordinates to locate his coffin as they appeared in Uncharted. How Drake's ring came to be locked away in a Seattle bank prior to the 2013 Outbreak is anyone's guess, seeing as it was last seen several years before in Uncharted 3, being swallowed up by quicksand in the lost city of Aram. And when you lose something in a lost city, well, you have to think that that thing is really lost. On the plus side, all these dates of fictional events remind us that 2015 set Uncharted 4 was set after The Last of Us' zombie outbreak, so I guess they don't share a fictional universe after all. Just as well, The Last of Us 2 is bleak enough without also picturing Nate, Sully, Elena and all my faves having their faces torn off.
Hello? Ellie?
Ellie's Sony Walkman isn't the only piece of Sony hardware to make a return to the Last of Us series.
Jesus.
In the first game, in Joel's original home, you can have a nose around to find that Joel's family own a PS3. And later on, Ellie can find one in a store as she wanders around now infected America. Man, I hope there's a discount for that being out of the box, and probably covered in infectious spores. In part 2, you'll find loads of PlayStation 3s as you wander around Seattle. I guess the fanboys are right and Sony really did win the console war. These PS3s are all sadly abandoned by their previous owners, who are now long gone, long passed away, or long turned into fungi. And no, we don't mean cool people to hang out with. However, when you start the game in Jackson, Wyoming, you can find 2 that have actually been played since the 2013 Outbreak. First off is one in Ellie's house. This one is particularly lovely to see for anyone who has played The Last of Us Left Behind DLC and seen how much Ellie wants to play video games.
Am I ever gonna get to play a video game? Your chances are dismal. F you, Skull.
It gave us a real warm feeling inside to see at least one of her dreams has come true, and that she has an original chonky PS3 complete with Sam Raimi Spider-Man writing. We honestly don't know what's more impressive, it surviving a zombie apocalypse or not having succumbed to the original PS3's yellow light of death. But it's not just Ellie who seems to have a working console. When you happen upon Eugene's den out in the old library near Jackson, you can find that he too has an original PS3. What luck! And yet there's not a single redesigned PS3 Slim or Super Slim to be found anywhere, despite both of them being released before the Outbreak. I guess that Sony is saying that with the PS3 Super Slim's sleek form and improved portability, everyone who owned one took it with them.
What?
You might assume the only thing you're likely to catch in The Last of Us 2's grim flooded district is cholera, but eagle-eyed players can also catch sight of a charming Jak and Daxter Easter egg. This treat is located within this sodden arcade, and could easily be missed if you're not paying attention to the titles of the individual games. For instance, you might be more interested in gathering the vital resources you need to live, or the fact that there's a mutilated corpse on the air hockey table. You can, however, spot this Jak X Combat Racing arcade cabinet. In real life, Jak X came out on the PlayStation 2 in 2005, and was re-released much later on the PS4. It never came out in arcades, though maybe that's for the best, seeing as the controls here look horrendously complicated. Seriously, what do you do in this game? Land a commercial airliner? In fact, this frenetic racing game saw cars blasting each other off the track with outlandish weapons and was based on Naughty Dog's series of Jak and Daxter platform games.
Love it!
Jak X Combat Racing may look like a fairly typical kart racer cash-in of a popular franchise, but was actually well received by critics, plus it had a surprisingly intense storyline about Jak being poisoned and needing to win races to find an antidote. Weird.
I'm probably dead already, but that doesn't mean I can't take a few scumbags with me.
Okay, calm down, Jak X. Jeez, I guess Naughty Dog never had any chill. This isn't the first time this arcade cabinet has been spied in the fictional world of The Last of Us. It actually cropped up already in the Left Behind DLC for the first game, where a younger Ellie, who hadn't yet had her powers of imagination crushed by the weight of the world, could actually sit in the chair and picture a race. As well as give her frank thoughts on the kart racer genre.
Man, shooting race cars? The game is stupid.
Sadly, the older Ellie has nothing to say on the subject. Still, fun to find an arcade in the unremittingly bleak world of The Last of Us. Reminds us that just because it's the apocalypse, the power is out, and everyone we could have played multiplayer with is dead, doesn't mean we can't still have a good time. Right? Okay, I think I'm even more depressed than before.
I wonder if there's anything left in these buildings.
There's always something left behind.
It's all very well having a PlayStation 3 in a zombie apocalypse, but what good is it if you don't have any games to play? Presumably the PlayStation Network wouldn't be running anymore, so all we have are the physical copies around the world. So what games are available post-Outbreak? Well, look closer at the PlayStation 3s you can find in Ellie and Eugene's rooms, and you can see 3 beloved Naughty Dog titles. First up is 2009's beloved Uncharted 2 Among Thieves, at the top of Eugene's pile, plus Ellie's case is open and empty, suggesting that it is either the most played or most recently played game for both of them. Our question for Ellie is, have you got to the bit with the helicopter fight, and why exactly is it your favourite action sequence in a video game of all time? Another game they both own is the Jak and Daxter Collection, an HD remake of the first 3 Jak and Daxter platformer games released for the PS3 back in February 2012. We do wonder if Ellie feels an affinity for Daxter, the smaller partner in a travelling pair, albeit a bit louder than she is.
I told you we shouldn't have come here, and you listened! What?
For both Ellie and Eugene, there is a third box in their collections, which is a little harder to identify. But with some internet sleuthing and a rummage through our old PS3 collections, we can conclude that this corner of box art belongs to none other than Uncharted Drake's Fortune, Naughty Dog's first dip into tomb raiding.
Francis Drake. So what were you looking for?
One question this does raise is why neither Ellie nor Eugene have a copy of 2011 release Uncharted 3 Drake's Deception, when it came out 2 years before the Outbreak Day events in September 2013. Maybe every copy was destroyed during the commotion? Perhaps a side effect of the virus is an urge to eat boxed copies of Uncharted 3 Drake's Deception? Hey, we're not scientists.
What's he got down here?
Well, it's obviously a sex den. That's why he didn't tell you about it.
By this point in the list, it'll be clear to any viewer that developer Naughty Dog treats its back catalogue of video games and its position as a first-party PlayStation developer with nothing but reverence. And this trend dates back further than The Last of Us Part 2. Consider the bold decision to interrupt the non-stop action of Uncharted 4 to make you play a surprisingly large amount of 1996 platformer Crash Bandicoot, which was the first game Naughty Dog made for Sony's first console.
Why is a fox smashing crates?
Bandicoot, and it's what he does.
It's a fox, and it's not very realistic.
That orange marsupial brought Naughty Dog's games to a huge audience and spawned a bunch of sequels, so it's not surprising that Crash, who was really a mascot for the first PlayStation, should have been remembered with this fond sequence.
Perfect.
By the way, foxes can't do this.
It's a bandicoot.
That doesn't look anything like a bandicoot.
Aw, how lovely. But we ask, what if you didn't have time to insert a whole Crash Bandicoot level into your game? What if you spent so long programming Ellie's ostentatiously perfect hair physics that there was none left to properly honour your beloved mascot of yesteryear? Well then, I guess you'd end up with the kind of Crash Bandicoot tribute that did make it into The Last of Us Part 2, namely the title of a porn VHS that Ellie and Dina find in an empty weed den.
Smash Brandy's cooch. Are these? It's porn. Interesting taste, Eugene.
Sorry, Crash, we'll do better in Part 3, honest. As an aside, the other tape full of smut that Dina name checks
Dong of the Wolf.
That's the one, is a reference to the fictional Dawn of the Wolf movie series you see posters for throughout The Last of Us and its sequel. Heartening to know that the makers of pornographic parody films kept on doing their thing even as society began to crumble. Reminds you what we're all fighting for.
Hey. Hey, Whitney. Oh, hey, Abby. What's up?
If you thought the only gaming hardware you could get your hands on in the post-apocalypse was going to be a PlayStation 3, then we've got good news for you, because in infected Seattle, you can find a PlayStation Vita. No, wait, where are you going? Come back! We all spotted this Sony Easter egg before the game was even released, as a sneak peek at some gameplay showed Ellie apprehending and killing a Washington Liberation Front soldier playing on a PlayStation Vita, presumably having spent every day since Outbreak Day scouring the world for but failing to find a Nintendo DS. The Vita was criticised for its modest library of games, so the big question is, what was she playing on it? Fortunately for this player, pixel top-down shooter Hotline Miami was released on the Vita in 2013, just in time for Vita owners to download it before everyone got turned into mushroom monsters. When we finally got to this section in the game, we had to take a closer look at the machine, and it's safe to say that the OLED screen of the original model has really lasted well since its release. This Vita was obviously well looked after by its now deceased owner, considering it came out in the USA in early 2012, over 25 years before the setting of The Last of Us Part 2. However, given the Vita's already questionable battery life, and batteries usually not holding their charge to the same extent after being used for years, this soldier was really unlucky to have been caught out by Ellie during one of the few moments that she actually had power to play the damn thing. Damn, 15 minutes later, that Vita would have been dead for sure. At least she died playing Hotline Miami, which was not only one of the best games on the Vita, but also clearly more fun than conversing with your fellow survivors.
That game good? Really hard. But really good. Got some great tunes too. Don't let me stop you. See you around. Video games.
So those were some Sony Easter eggs that we spied in The Last of Us Part 2. Have you seen any others? Let us know in the comments if so. See if you can to keep the comments as spoiler-free as possible, just for anyone who hasn't finished the story yet. And if you enjoyed this, then there is every chance you will enjoy the community shows that we do so often. Every week we do live streams, all sorts of stuff. Yeah, it's really fun. We just talk about video games. It's a lot less formal than these list videos, but hopefully just as fun. So if you did like this, I think you will like those as well. So why not like and subscribe and ring that bell so you get notified when we do something daft like a live stream or something like that. Okay, well, thank you very much for watching, and we will see you next time. Bye.